Hi, this is Dennis Dalton, the safety officer for Rocky Mountain Flight Training Center. And this is the January 25th safety briefing, which is really the operations review for 2020. For 2021. So for the year 2021, we had 2,584 total sorties and 4,491.9 total hours flown in club aircraft. So that's pretty close to last year, which usually the year before, which was 2020. Even though it was the pandemic, it was we only did about 50 more hours last year than we did the year before. But we flew a lot more hours flown, it looks like, than we did. The achievements was a total of 47 certificates, ratings, and solos. We had 13 first solos last year, 12 new private pilot certificates, 5 instrument ratings, 4 commercial ratings, 5 multi-engine, 2 multi-engine instrument certificates, 2 ATPs, 1 initial CFI, and 3 double I's last year. The safety meetings, I'll briefly go through these. The February safety briefing covered our pre-flight checklists, SOPs, and FAA regulatory responsibilities for safety of flight, and specific elements of the checklist were examined in detail. The March safety briefing was review of the bird strike program, BASH, when and where you might encounter birds and other wildlife, what kinds out there, and how to file forms, FAA 5207 and the AFMAN 583. The April safety briefing was on aircraft performance, a review of the factors that influence aircraft performance on takeoff. Ingenuity, if you remember that NASA mini helicopter, I talked about that, which landed on, took off from Mars and was the first powered flight, controlled flight on another planet. With an air mass less than 1% of Earth, this event was introduced to discuss aircraft performance during takeoff phase. Density, altitude, and ground effect was explored using Leadville, Colorado Airport for a scenario training problem. The May safety briefing was aircraft accidents, the little things that matter. All these accidents, of course, were close to the ground. I looked at 3 accidents involving 172 aircraft in Colorado and what could be learned from the NTSB reports. The first was a taxi accident at Front Range, which is now the Colorado Air and Spaceport. Second was a takeoff at the Air Force Academy, which is basically a cross control issue. They, not using inputs correctly, and it went off the edge of the side of the runway, downwind, tipped over. And the third was one of our club aircraft, which is what it says behind the picture here, at Colorado Springs here. The June one, it was directed by Flight Safety of the National Aero Club group. And so they wanted to talk about the lack of checklist discipline and guidance and regulations and faulty judgment and decision-making processes. And so they had a regular format that we followed for that June safety briefing, which was, and the accidents that were reviewed were national statistics and not this club. The July safety, well, the July briefing, Justin wasn't here, and so they had another presenter, and they didn't produce a YouTube. August, Bob wanted to do the hot start procedures again. And so basically what I did was give him the YouTube, which was very thorough in 2020 on the exact same subject for the exact same month. So we just reloaded the August 2020 YouTube on that, and it's a pretty thorough YouTube. It's kind of lengthy, but it talks about what to do when the engine doesn't start, hot start procedures, run up, the aircraft sometimes stalling on landing if it's really hot out. I talked about clearing plugs, how to use tie the aircraft down, and I think also talked about the tarp, how to use that aircraft cover. So that was the August one. September, dealing with shorter days, longer nights. This safety briefing reviews the night flying regulations from the FAA and the AFMAN 134-117 covering night ops for the Aero Club. I talked a little bit about sunset and twilight definitions and the NTSB safety report on CFIT accidents and mitigation tactics to avoid that. Yeah, October was the BASH program again. The SOPs do require that this be reviewed twice a year. So again, it was the same YouTube as I did in wherever I said that was, March or something. So different types of birds have been encountered by aircraft at KCOS, and I listed those birds and pictures of them, things like that, and discussed night wildlife hazards as well for this region, which includes a lot of deer and antelope. The BASH forms, again, 52077 and the AFMAN 583 were covered. The November safety briefing was on no time threats and those that require immediate action. This was well, sometimes called critical action procedures. What they are is the memory items, as we call them, before you get to a checklist. And that's kind of a rote, almost a muscle memory situation where you don't have time to do the checklist. And so there are basic things you would need to do in certain situations. So it says here not to be aggravated and have injury or damage result. And then you go through your regular briefing. So that was in November. And of course there wasn't one in December, as we just had the January thing. This is the first full year of the safety briefings in a video YouTube format, the first full year of that. We did start it during the COVID shutdown back in March of 2020. So these are all accessible through the new website. Well, it's not new anymore, but it was last year. YouTube videos will continue to be produced in addition to the paper briefing and the monthly in-person safety meetings that are required by SOPs when they are allowed by the Air Force to be conducted. These briefings are created and narrated by me. They're currently presented by Justin, the Aero Club manager. They last, these YouTube things last 20-30 minutes, except today's is probably going to be shorter. Become available on the last Tuesday of the month, which is the same time as the scheduled meetings. And this is the link if you haven't been to this website yet. And more than likely in the future, I will be doing these in person instead of having Justin run these. I don't know. Well, there has been a price increase. I thought I had another list here. So I don't know what happened to this one. But anyway, the instruction rate is now $45 an hour. Oh, I see what happened. I guess I put it down here on this one. Well, I should have eliminated that other slide. Anyway, what I did here is there was no increase in the rates this year, but I did, when I got these numbers from Bob, I put the numbers next to the aircraft. I know I did have 6/6 November in one of the pictures here, but it didn't really fly here last year. So, these are the numbers of all the aircraft and what they, hours that they flew last year. And so as you can see, 7-4, quite a bit of hours, and 09, and look at 50 uniform. So in any event, that's just for something if you're interested in that. And what I did in the first slide, of course, was just added all these up. So that's really the conclusion of this safety briefing for January 25th, 2022. This is Dennis Dalton, Safety Officer, and I'll see you next month.